Salibonani, Moroi, Muribwan, the Girls Table Talk Show, where we talk about issues that affect young women. My name is Bekezela Mguni, and today I'm joined by the other young women to talk about the gender disparities in the mining sector. Unemployment, the economy being shaky, abantu abangomama labo are participating in artisanal and small-scale mining. So, what are the gender disparities in the mining sector in Zimbabwe? May you please introduce yourself before singing.
So, my name is Unika. I am working currently for the Zimbabwe Coalition on Data and Development. I identify myself as a writer, as a blogger, and I write primarily on issues to do with women, politics, and most recently mining or the natural resource governance sector.
Unika, the gender disparities in the mining sector in Zimbabwe.
It employs over 500,000 people, which is 500,000 people. So when we look at the numbers, we are happy because people are finally getting formal employment. And as you rightfully said, because of the economic volatility of the economy, more and more people are getting into mining because it's easier to get into, particularly if you live in a mining area. However, when we then look at the profitability with regards to the amount of money that women and men get, that's where we find the gender disparities. When we look at the roles in which men and women partake in terms of mining, it's also very different. I'll give an example to say that when we look at statistics on the people that are owning mines, the people that are concession owners, the people that are owning mining claims, most of those people are usually men. Even when we look at the people that are like the men, between the people that source the gold and the people that buy the gold, most of those people are men. But women, will then find women in the sector as people that are penning the gold and doing these things that seem like they are the smaller part of the things to do. And also, again, when you look at statistics, particularly in the African continent, women make up close to, or usually 50% of people that are in the small and artisanal mining sector. And you then really just expect that these women find themselves at positions where they are also able to make the same amount of money that men are making. But when you look at the disparities or the realities of the mining sector, you find that that's not what's happening currently on the ground.
What are the reasons behind these gender disparities? You talked about women doing partly easy simple as compared to men. You talked about the issue of ownership. A few are owning mines, if there are any. So I want to understand what are the reasons behind it.
Okay, so I think it always goes back to the society that we live in. I love looking at things from the society where we come from, where we stem from, and understanding the environment. When we look at Zimbabwe, it's a mainly or majorly patriarchal society. So that means that men are at the forefront of making decisions. And when you then trace Mudala in terms of Zimbabwean economy and Zimbabwean society, men were the providers. Men were supposed to be the people that were going out there and making money for the family. And when you then look at that now, you then find a situation whereby men were already making money in the mining sector. Men were already the providers in most families. And then because of the economic volatility in the country, women then started to, they say, okay, we can't also get formally employed the same way men can't get formally employed. So let's also try and find a way to make a living in the mining sector. But we understand that there are social beliefs. Take, for instance, there are these myths in mining where women are seen as these people. In fact, if they are menstruating in other parts of the country, they are not supposed to be found anywhere near mining operations because it is believed that they bring bad luck and abantu gabasoke bathola the gold or whatever it is that they are mining. So the fact that we live in a patriarchal society that mandates men to be the providers, that mandates men to always be at the forefront of whatever causes there, then that then creates the disparities that we then find. Also, there is the economic aspect of it. When we look at the mining operation in itself, the fact that as a person to then say, today I have a mine, you have to first identify a mining area you want to operate and have a mining claim, get the claim or the place pegged. All of those processes require money. And when you look at this money sometimes goes up to the $2,000 US. And how many women currently in the sector or in Zimbabwe can then say that they can afford to own mining claims or to have mines? So the economic disparities that are there in our society then lead to the disparities that we then meet in terms of mining.
Thank you so much. One thing that I'm taking note of, if patriarchy is everywhere, talk about women taking up leadership spaces, patriarchy is there. We are talking about women in the mining sector, patriarchy is there. There's a lot that needs to be done in dealing with patriarchy so that women also take up these spaces, equality. But I want to understand how can the mining sector promote a more inclusive and diverse culture that respects and values the contribution of men and women at all levels.
Maybe we also have to understand some of the challenges that these women go through for us to then be able to say we want to foster that inclusivity, because we're already at a point whereby we understand that the mining sector is not inclusive to women based on the sexual exploitation that is there, based on the sexual abuse that is there of women in mining communities, but also women that are in mining. I was reading a certain study that shows that in Berengwa, Shishavane, and there's another third area, there were at least 35 rape cases that were reported in a month alone. And this study was just looking at these 3 top mining companies. But when you look at that, that shows you the extent in which women are abused in the mining sector. You look at the sexual exploitation, whereby, as we were previously saying, that most of these women can't afford to get mining claims. They don't own the mines, so most of them exist as small and artisanal miners. Most of them are unregistered, and which means they're operating illegally. So policemen do take advantage of that fact and then try to then exploit them sexually and in other aspects as well. When you look at statistics in terms of gender-based violence, mining communities are at the forefront of those cases, because men there tend to be very violent towards women. So these are just some of the challenges that women in mining or in mining communities face. So for us to then get to a point whereby we understand or we come up with inclusive solutions in terms of the mining sector in Zimbabwe, we have to first be able to identify first, then second of all, we have to be able to then look at the problems and accept and believe that they are there. Because what is also there in a patriarchal society is that we understand, we always say, yes, life is hard for everyone, life is hard for women, but we demean whatever it is that they are going through. So we need to be in a position whereby we accept and bring relevance to the challenges that women are facing. But also I think that most importantly, there needs to be a formation of a board whereby the issues of women, particularly women in mining communities and women that are miners themselves, are able to come together. One aspect of that we'll look at, I know that there are a lot of miners associations that are currently being formed, and also more and more women are forming associations. That's one way of coming together as a collective, as women, and trying to get heard by the government. But also to say that on that, I feel like a comprehensive policy in addressing issues to do with mining will not only address women that are in the mining sector per se, but we should also address women that are in mining communities, because mining is a totally very invasive process that not only changes the environmental landscape in which it operates, but it also goes on to change the social and economic factors of life. If you look at most mining communities, Gwanda, Wanke, Chiadzwa, we have a lot of sexual work that is currently happening in those. We also have a lot of poverty. So mining communities are also facing what we call a resource case in natural resource governance. So whatever policy that is then formulated would need to also address the challenges in terms of the mining sector, but also not just the women that are in mining themselves.
We are learning a lot from this conversation. It's bad that you're talking about the issue of sexual harassment, where women are harassed in their workplaces in the mining sector. I was reading an article where someone was saying there was an issue in Machete where abantu ababuyayo zamazama fighting abantu bemamine, they target abantu abangomama because babekwazi ukuthi you don't have the manpower. But well, I want to understand what initiatives are there to promote women's empowerment and gender equality in the mining sector?
That's a very good question. And the reason why it's good is that, it's not good to have conversations and all you're doing is criticizing. I think the government of Zimbabwe has made efforts in terms of trying to get more women in mining. We've seen them really releasing loan facilities for women in mining to be able to access, to be able to buy equipment and all of that. We've also seen institutions like there's this institution, mining institution in Bulawayo, that really goes on to empower females in terms of those that want to study mining as well. We have seen the government talking more and more about mining, particularly women in mining. And in terms of the loan facilities, I'm glad that it was opened or allowed for women to access it for a while. I was reading something by Mukasiri Sibanda, and he was commenting to say that in a space where it's 100 million that is supposed to be in the mining sector, the government will come and say, well, 30 million is reserved for women. What that then means is that the other 70% is for men. So already that's a disparity. So I really liked how he was looking at it from, and when you look at the loan facilities that the government has provided so far for women in mining, they've always been like that. So yes, there have been strides to sort of empower women, but I feel they're not enough. They're nowhere close to being enough, because when you look at the issue of the mining claims and the fact that they are so expensive, the government should look at actually addressing. It's one way to try and empower and capacitate or to develop, but it's one way to try and then address the challenges that a certain group is facing. And I feel as if most of the solutions that the government has profiled are solutions that are not based on the realities on the ground. We know that women are being raped in the mining sector. We know they are being sexually exploited. We know of the GBV cases that are in mining communities. We also know of the economic exploitation that is there. What solutions has the government profiled in terms of trying to address those? And when you then ask those questions, you'd find that the government has been found wanting. But I'm glad that civic society organizations have been taking that gap and trying to fill in. I'll talk about Zimcode. Zimcode capacitates women in mining areas. It teaches them about their rights. It organizes dialogues between them and mining companies, which is very important for, positive engagement between the communities and the people that own those companies. I know Zela also does things in terms of the women in mining, but as I said, I think that it would even be more if the government is involved and is also helping the civic society sector, because they are the ones that are truly mandated to work for the people of Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much. I hope someone from the government will hear this. So they should assist in making sure that we protect women who are in the mining sector and make sure that there is gender equality. Who own mines, we are there only in planning and doing these simple small works, but Bekezela, because in our fight in making sure we gender equality, have the same opportunities as men. I want to understand what can be done then to advocate for gender equality in the mining sector. Government to get the government as well on board.
Well, I think that civic society organizations have already started the call to try and get government, and I would say that government has been responsive, because I'm happy to talk about Zimbabwe Mine. There is a mine in Zimbabwe called Zimbabwe Mine, and it employs an all-female task force. Every person from the managerial to the partners themselves are female. So I would say that the government has been a bit responsive in terms of civic society networks or solutions in terms of trying to bring them to the table. But I would think that for the rest of the communities, I think we also need to start understanding what mining means to us. I remember writing a few weeks ago about the fact that a lot of Zimbabweans saying, Zimbabwe ile mali, we and I think from the time we were in primary school, we learned what Zimbabwe is a wealthy country. But do we really truly understand what it means to be a wealthy country? Do we truly understand, currently, do we understand how much money the gold sector is making, for example? Do we understand how much the diamond sector is making, for example? Zimbabwe has has recently, or Zimbabwe discovered lithium in the 90s, but the exploration of it has been increased because of the just energy transition that is currently taking place in terms of, the world. And we've seen more and more attention going to lithium. Zimbabwe has got the 5th largest lithium deposits in the world, and the biggest and the largest in Africa. In terms of gold deposits, we're also at the top. Diamond were there, and we have, I think, over 57 different minerals in Zimbabwe. So when we say that we are wealthy, we understand, but I think that it is time for each and every Zimbabwean person to begin to question, okay, we are this wealthy, but why are we this poor? Why is it, for instance, maybe in Goromonzi, when you look at Goromonzi, I think there's only one hospital currently. And when you look at even places like Wange, when you look at places like Gwanda, you have children there that are not able to pay for their fees. But millions of gold, millions of lithium, millions of diamond is taken from these communities yearly. So where is this money going? So citizens need to start asking themselves those questions, and they need to start demanding government answers those questions. And it is only when we start doing this that we'll start to get the right answers. And the right answers would mean better care for us as human beings. I'll say this lastly. There are statistics by, I think it's the UN, that say that Zimbabwe lost over 22 billion United States US dollars to illicit financial flows. Illicit financial flows here, we're looking at money that is being used or that is disappearing. I'll say, let me use the word disappearing to say that these are illicit financial flows, money that cannot be accounted for. And when we look at the mining sector, that is where the biggest illicit financial flows are happening. But 22 billion is enough to pay off the debt that Zimbabwe currently has, which is 18 billion. 22 billion is enough to solve a lot of the country's problems right now. It could solve our electricity problems, it could solve our water problems, but we keep on losing money because we're not asking government where our money is going. So it's time for citizens to step up more and more efforts and demand. And it's not just going to Harare and saying, I want parliament to speak or to address. It's actually starting by questioning your local councillor, your local MP, to say, where is the money for our gold or diamond? Where is it going?
We had a conversation recently about fighting inequalities with Zimcot. And there was a talk around the Pumula mine, where people were saying there were consultations before that mine started the works. I'd want to understand from you, do you think people are not questioning the government because we're ignorant, or it's because we don't have the right information? We don't know all about the figures. Okulumanga, the 22 billion that was lost. Kulo muntu osemakhaya who doesn't understand that. Kulo muntu osemakhaya who doesn't understand ukuthi nxa i-mining company ibuya endaweni yethu kumele kube lana. Kumele si-consult, kuma-consultations kumele sikhulume ngani. Thina amalungelo ethu as abantu abaku-mining community yona leyo kumele kube njani. So can you just make me and other people understand ukuthi, is it because we are ignorant or asikwazi? Lokuthi maybe just hints ukuthi nxa abantu laba bebuya, what should we look for kuma consultations? What should we expect? Because sebengasibuza ukuthi imine ibe khona lena lifuna sisale singakwazi ukuthi vele kokhulunywa ngani. I remember you were there, someone said sometimes ama consultations lawa ayenziwa kubuye ubeke who doesn't even understand anything about the mining sector. Sivume yonke into kuthiwa lizathola imgwaqo sivume, after that you don't even go back to ask them, but you promised us ukuthi when you guys come here you are going to develop areas like you. So do you think people know about all these things or asazi?
One thing that I like about the mining sector in Zimbabwe, particularly with my work or our work as Zimcode, is that I've seen how when you go to Wange, and I think I mentioned it in that meeting, when you go to Wange, when you go to Gwanda, when you go to even Matopo, when you go to the mining or mineral resource places in Zimbabwe, you find the same problems. And our problems that you're talking about in terms of consultations, in terms of environmental degradation are always there in those mining sectors. And most recently, Katesi, when we look at Phumula. To answer your question, I like the question that you brought about. I don't think the mining sector is really about ignorance, particularly for mining communities, because as I said, mining is a deeply invasive process. It's different from, say, or writing a budget consultations, or it's voting, which no one will bother you. When we look at mining, currently in Phumula, people are complaining about their houses having cracks. People are complaining about the noise. When you go to Wange, it's the same thing. When you go to Gwanda, it's the same thing. So mining will force you, if someone was to start mining at your backyard right now, they will force you to participate. So these mining communities want to participate. They are trying to participate, but as you said, or as you were referring to, most of them don't know how to. So when you look at mining, usually what happens is that processes just happen without the consultation of people. And where consultation is there, it's done in such a way it's something that's being hidden. And who will know, all right, we want to start mining in Phumula. Phumula maybe has a population of 22,000 people, but out of those 22,000 people, that shows you ukuthi there wasn't equal or enough advertisement to show what, okay, we want to consult. And when as a mining company, or when as the Minister of Local Authority, when you see 12 people coming in a population over 22,000, how can you then call that a consultation meeting? So people want to participate, but again, when they get to the meetings, yeah, okay, the generation is going to be, we are going to be projecting, they get hidden by these different mining terms. So are you assenting? Do you consent? They don't even know what consent is. And then to that person or the mining company, so people who consulted in. So one thing is, as you said, people hardly attend, but it's not because people are ignorant. Most times in the advertising, people don't know, are not told, they are not notified on time. Two, also people, when they get there, they don't know what to say, or but also in terms of the mining companies themselves, none of them, or most of them, are not willing to listen to what citizens are saying. And I'm basing this on the work that we do in the mining communities, because it's always the same complaints from communities. Basically, we talk, we discuss, but our phone. And even when you look at the mining dialogues that we have with, okay, let's try and bring mining companies and mining communities together, the mining companies, most times they don't show up because of our selandab. And for me, this has always been a problem that goes back to how the contract was awarded. So I feel like in awarding these contracts, maybe they are not made to understand. Maybe they are made to understand which they are our knights in shining armor. So when they come here, respect, and they don't really care what we say. Because when you look, you can even look at the amount of allegations that have been laid against foreign companies in terms of child labor rights, in terms of in terms of abuse. How many of those have been acted on?
It's so bad. Some people, even mining communities even abantu abethu are not benefiting from this mining esilayo. Uyabuthola ukuthi kule mine kodwa abantwana bakhona basebenzi, then thina sithola there is not development, abantu abethu are unemployed. But mfuna ukuzwisisa ukuthi, is there anything that we can do as citizens? Talk about iPhumula mining, where the residents were saying there is so much destruction of infrastructure because of mining. Yes, all abantu abethu, you are writing exams ngapha kulomsindo, and our own mind don't even care. Is there anything that people can do, maybe situation enjalo too? Maybe babona ukuthi abantu labana abamayinayo bayahamba, or anything that can protect them nxa sebezithola ukuthi mining leyo kuba khona kwayo thina kuyas affect as.
I think that it's important that we understand that in as much as we might want to address these things as local communities, we really cannot, because, as I said, these things are national problems. Last week, or recently, really, there was the Zimbabwe Alternative Mining Indaba, which brought together stakeholders in different parts of Zimbabwe and mining communities and key stakeholders in terms of the government. And the problems were always the same. So I think that in trying to address some of those challenges, particularly to do with mining, we need to look at it from a national holistic perspective. When we look at, I think the first thing, there is currently the Mines and Minerals Bills that is being amended. I think we should really push as citizens to make sure that the amendment will really mandate corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility says that it is the duty of companies or mining companies to give back to communities. But when I say give back, I think also the bill should be able to do this. So we're not saying drill boreholes and you say you've done enough. Build back or bring equitable and sustainable projects. Take at least 100 children to school every year, because we know when you take them to school, you've already created opportunities for themselves. Build schools, build hospitals, build roads, things that will allow for the local business or the local business economy to function. So we need to make sure that corporate social responsibility is mandated. We also need to make sure that as citizens, we call for transparency and accountability, particularly in the awarding of contracts that are there in mining. When we look at most of those contracts, we are too slalele pumula susizwa kuthiwa kule mining company efunga ubuya iqalisa their quarry mine khona, and the contract has already been awarded. But when you are a resident of Pumula, you are the one who will hear the blast. It's not someone who's sitting in Harare Ngale or with local authority whose children will get affected. It's you. So we need there to be transparency and accountability in terms of the awarding of mining contracts. Again, also we need to understand as a country, we need a sustainability plan, right? To say yes, Zimbabwe mine has come to our community and it has mined a gold or whatever it's mining for 10 years. What happens after? Because the environment will never look the same. The social aspect or the social lives of people will never be the same. The economic aspect of that particular place will never be the same. So there should be a sustainable plan that will ensure people there keep on living their lives as good as they did even before this mining company. But also in terms of the environment, more trees are planted, the pits are covered up and things like that. So I think with regards to mining, let's look at it at a holistic perspective. Let's drive solutions that address the mining sector as a whole, but not just mining communities. I think that's how I look at it.
Thank you so much, Unika. I'm learning a lot. I'll keep in touch. I'm learning a lot. Mining, I hope people know about it and have their voices so that whatever happens, communities at okuhambelana le mining sibe sure ukuthi lathi we benefit. And I urge ukuthi ama citizens, whenever there is a consultation, whether it's budget or anything that's going to affect us, asisukumeni, because akusizi ukuthi lithi after 2 years or a year abantu sebeqalisile their mining activities selibona lesithi thina sisafuna, because it's not easy ukuthi libakhiphe. So we should make sure ukuthi siyaresearch abantu labana bengakabuyi, asingabalekeli ukuthi sithi bona information ibuya 2 days before, but okusalayo ibuya 2 days before, but we are affected. Ungazi ukuthi no angenzi mzayekela kunjalo kodwa affected at the end of the day. It's you. Thank you so much, Unika, for an enlightening conversation. I hope someone will gain something from this. Sikubone kuqakathekile ukuthi sisukumele phezulu as young people, as young women, as citizens generally, ukwenzela ukuthi whatever affect us sibe kwazi ukuthi but lami ivoice yami khona kuliyana into eyenzakalayo. Until next time from the Girls Table, thank you so much. Please don't forget to follow us on our social media pages. Go Twitter, it's table_girls. Go Facebook, it's the Girls Table. Instagram, the.girlstable. Sikona la go YouTube, where you can listen to these conversations on issues that affect young women. Namhlanje besikhuluma nge-gender disparities in the mining sector in Zimbabwe, and kunengi ongakufunda from just listening to this conversation okuzakwenza uzizwe uqhuquzeleka lawe ukuthi ube yingxenye ya any consultation eyenzakalayo ngezinto ezis-affectayo in our areas. Thank you so much, madam.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time, from the girls' table, siyabonga.